We set a pretty aggressive goal to double our agency from 2021 to 2026. And that's what we're on track doing right now. That's the path that we've been on right now.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
It is going really well. I am super excited to be here podcasting. It's the next best thing to being in person with agents. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's like a nice day outside. I got to go on a little walk at lunch, so it's going good. But I'm so excited to introduce one of my favorite people in this industry so far. She is a pink blazer wearing boss lady, Michelle O'Connor. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being on. So tell us a little bit about how you started in the industry and what you've been doing so far.
Sure. So I think most people in insurance have fallen into it in one regard or another, and I was no exception. I had a neighbor who worked for Erie Insurance, and there was a position available, and he called me up one day and said, I need you to go to HR and apply. And so I did, and I was accepted into a training program for district sales managers by Erie in Erie, Pennsylvania. And we were trained for 9 months. It was a great program. Erie really did a phenomenal job with the training program. We had underwriters and claims adjusters with us, which was so unique, and then really helped our relationships when we got out into the field. The catch was that in December of that year, they told us which branch we were going to. We didn't know where we would be moving. And so I drew the lucky straw and got to go to Asheville, North Carolina, and the Charlotte branch. So I spent a little over a year in Asheville, and then moved to Charlotte. During that time, my fiance became my husband, and he was not as enamored with his job he had chosen. And so he ultimately decided that he'd like to join me in the insurance world. And he started our agency from scratch shortly after that, out of the bedroom of our house.
Oh my goodness. So Michelle, I got to tell you something before we go much further. I don't know a lot of people who have spent that amount of time in Erie, Pennsylvania. I graduated from this small little town in Pennsylvania called DuBois, Pennsylvania. Do you know where that is?
I do. I am an Indiana University of Pennsylvania graduate.
Oh my goodness. My sister went to IUP. Holy cow. That's hilarious. So Erie was a place I went shopping. Like you either went to Pittsburgh or Erie when you had to go school clothes shopping. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, so
that's right. It is. And I did grow up in Erie. I lived there from the time I was 10 on. So definitely an Erie native. Love it, but don't miss the cold.
No, not at all. It's like the snow belt of anyway. And I got to tell you, going from Erie to Asheville, what a gift. Oh my goodness. That's a beautiful place.
It certainly was. And North Carolina in general, I mean, we just love North Carolina. I've always joked that it was a one-way trip on 77. There was no going back.
I feel the same way about the trip I took from Columbus, Ohio to Hilton Head. It's like, yeah, I don't miss a lot other than the people. The thing is, you always miss the people.
That's right.
Hey guys, if you're looking to improve your bottom line, allow your team to operate efficiently, and really improve that customer retention, I believe you should check out Ascend. Ascend is the all-in-one insurance payment solution. They are focused on streamlining your invoicing, premium financing, accounting, and they'll even make your carrier payables for you. They are taking agency bill and making it as easy as direct bill. That is a game changer. They integrate with all of the major AMS players, and here's the best part. It's free. There is no subscription, no cost to you. They allow your customers to pay how they want. If you are interested in improving your efficiency, go visit ascend.com/insurance refocused and let them know that we sent you. So you said something really, really important. you started a business with your husband. And I got to tell you, I 100% adore my husband. He's an amazing man. We've raised two great kids together, but I'm just not sure I could run a business with my husband. Tell me what that's all about. What does that look like?
Well, some days are really good and some days are really bad. So I think we were just young and didn't know any better. We literally got married in October and he started the agency in January. I stayed with Erie for 2 years, and then we were commission only, and we have been ever since. So that's a unique arrangement all in of itself. But early on, our hardest part was being in each other's way. We're very, very, very similar personalities, and we profile almost identical all of the time. So that can lead to struggles, power struggles, probably more than anything. So kind of the $1 million moment was we realized what our gifts were in the agency, and we got in our own lanes, and we try to stay there as best we can. Once we stay in our own lanes, that's where the magic really happens, because who better to be in partnership with than your spouse, who I trust implicitly. I know he's always got the best interests of our family and our business in his mind first and foremost. So that really makes some magic if we can stay in our own lanes.
So how did you do that though? Like you have to be pretty introspective to know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. Like, did it take a while to get to what the roles were that you were going to take over? Like, what did that look like?
Yes, it definitely took a while. Mainly because when we started with no business, right? So we're just hungry and we're just trying to write insurance as fast and furious as we can. I think some of our arguments early on were the deficiencies. I'm not quite as detail oriented as he is. That is one flaw on my charts. So I would, basically bring it in and throw it up against the wall to see if it was going to stick. And that would agitate the crap out of him. So now he loves my ability to go and get it. He just doesn't like what I do with it after that. And the fact that I pretty much want to just hand it off at that point. And so, once we had kids, that really, we had to define our roles too, because, operationally I was coming in and out of the business, obviously, while having those kiddos and staying home with them. And so that made us have to define it a little bit. He's really a good sales go-getter. And so he became the leader in that. And I kind of started to take the operational role, managing the folks, which he's not as fond of managing our team. He loves our team. He just doesn't want to be in charge of doing reviews and things like that are more HR functions. So that kind of helped it take shape. I think our struggles still are just power struggles. That would be our number one. We both want to have our ideas heard, and our best discussions are when we both sit down and really listen to the other one, so we can understand, even if it's a decision or a idea that I don't love, that I'm listening to where he's coming from and what his goal is with it, so that we can come to the best solution for the agency.
Yeah. One of the things that you said was he's always got the best interest for the business, the family, and me in mind. How do you do it all. You're president of the INC board, you're a mom, you're a business owner, you're in multiple networking groups. How do you balance it all? How do you do the work-life balance that it takes to manage all that?
So that is such a good question, because I think the work-life balance is actually a myth. There is no such thing. And it took me such a long time to accept that. I was constantly fighting it and trying to make things fit into boxes that they didn't fit in. So, some weeks it's all O'Connor Insurance, and I need a lot of extra time to make what happens need to happen. So my daughter might pull her stuff out for homework, and I come home and sit with her at the table, and we both do our homework together. And that's okay. And I've finally decided that is okay. That is actually a great situation. And then some weeks my family needs me more. And so I'm more heavy helping them. And sometimes IANC needs me more. I mean, we've got some really cool projects going on I'm so excited about. And when they're in the moment and things are happening, I have to be involved in that to help with that momentum and give my input where it's needed. So that's been wonderful too. So it's not really a balance. And that's the beauty of it. It's okay that the pendulum goes completely one way. I just have to always remind myself that it will come back, that I will get to the other side of it when it gets pretty crazy.
Michelle, I get to talk to a lot of agencies, and many of them have multiple owners. And, some are related, they're brother, sister, sometimes it's father, son, in your case, husband, wife. I think that's true in every partnership, that you've got to figure out. Sometimes people are going to be all in. Sometimes their life is going to pull them out. But when you don't have clear communication, it can be really challenging. So, and if you don't discuss certain things, you could get completely on the separate page. And sadly, that's sometimes where I come in, where people want to transition differently than someone else. The good news is you guys are married and you've got to have that conversation about your family, about your business, about all of those things. But, can you ever tell me when maybe you were like, you know what, this is rough. A scratch agency is no joke. It is no joke. I get to work with all kinds, legacy agencies, fifth generation agencies, scratch agencies that are just starting out. Have you ever felt like, man, this is too much and maybe this isn't for me?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There was one particularly dark time. I mean, any given day we've had a bad week and I'm like, I'm hanging the shingle up that we are for sale. But in reality, there was a really dark couple of years when our kids were very young. That was probably the hardest time ever because there was just such a time crunch with trying to get it all done. And then, now my kids are 16 and 11. When I come home, we have dinner together, but then my hubby and I can actually watch a television show and they typically don't want to do that with us. So there's some quiet time. At that time of our lives, there was no quiet time. It was immediately into homework and bath and bed. And then by that time, you're exhausted and you're going to bed. The agency was also suffering just from normal agency problems, but they had piled up. It was, HR related, trying to get people to stick, growth oriented, like how on earth are we going to get from that, the scratch agency, every level is so just essential to get to the next level. And how are we going to do that? How are we going to get to this level? And it felt like it had all just kind of caved in. So luckily we were working with a business coach. Carey and I were both working with her together. I think it was, that or truly hang up the shingle. And she was great. At one point though, she said to me, I need you to do this gratitude journal so that you can help yourself figure out what on earth it is that you want to do. And I am not a journal person, not even a tiny little bit. So it was painful. It was so painful. But what I realized was that the agency actually was my gateway to having freedom with my family, because I can leave and pick up a child and come back and do homework and sit at the table with her and finish up for the day. And so there was so much beauty in that I finally started to see the joy in the agency, and slowly the joy crept back in.
It's hard though. I mean, I would say that in a lot of people's worlds, getting back to gratitude, it really can change your perspective. And it's really easy to be pulled down into not seeing the good in things. I mean, listen, I have a brand new company myself, and it is hard work to build a company. It really is. And so I love that, number one, you got a job, you got a coach, and you and your husband did it together. And then doing something that's completely out of your comfort zone. I'm not a journal person either. So that would have been a little uncomfortable, but good for you. That's fantastic. What advice? So you've obviously figured out how to work as a husband-wife team. For those agencies out there that are husband-wife teams, what bits of advice would you give them in order to be as successful as you guys have been?
Figuring out your gifts is probably the number one thing, because once you figure out what you're good at and what you like in conjunction with that, what's your gift and what do you like to do in the operation, I feel like that's where you're both doing your best work. So when you get into that spot, we don't have any overlap either in our job duties. So that was also super important to us, even to the point where, I'm in charge of the budget and I've got a line where I make decisions under that amount because he doesn't want involved. That's your lane. You know what we've got going on. You know what the finances look like. Run when you need to run so that we're not holding each other up. So that has been super important to us. And then also the long-term game is also really important to us right now, extremely important to us right now. We are on a mission to do something very specific. We know what that is. We're clear what that is. So having the North Star that we're headed towards is extremely important for us staying on track. And then I also think that we have to take more time to listen to each other. And, we probably disagree, more than most couples do just because of the volume of conversations that we have. But we have to take a lot of time to listen to each other to kind of understand where the other one's coming from, because of the working relationship.
Yeah, I love that.
You've mentioned a couple of times that you found your gift. Go tell me a little bit more about that. Go a little bit deeper. Like, how did you find your gift? Was there a specific test? The hot thing right now is like the Enneagram test, the Colby index score, all of those things. What did you do? How did you find your gift?
So, and we've done a number of those. We've done the DISC test together. I've been tested in a couple of other formats. I just recently did the Colby, which was really interesting too. So I think that helps because it kind of shapes what it is that you already know about yourself. And then also just what do you like to do? Like we identified early on that I'm not real good with the detail. So that is a problem when I'm completing applications. I want to talk to you. I want to talk all about your family, your business, your pets, all that stuff. And then that's it. I don't want to do anything else. So if you leave it up to me, something will happen and we will have to pay our E&O because of just the way that I operate. Somebody's got to check after me on those things. But the weird part is I can go super detailed when it comes to an operational thing or it comes to a process and a procedure because I like getting my hands dirty in that capacity. So that I love. I love figuring out what's the client experience that we're trying to provide, and then how can we help our team to back into that with our processes and procedures in the most technologically savvy way that we can.
So this industry is changing. No question about that, right, Michelle? I mean, you've been in this industry for a while, and this podcast is defined insurance refocused. Like, what are you doing inside your agency to move it and shape it for the way customers now want to engage with you, the way carriers have different expectations? Technology's huge. Like, tell me how you're focused in really evolving as our industry evolves.
So the number one thing we're doing and have been doing for the last couple of years is trying to stay very clear on the fact that we want our professional people that have years of experience to be talking to our clients. And that's where we want them spending their time. I don't want them spending their time pushing buttons behind the scenes. So that's probably been one of the most frustrating parts of where we're at with technology right now. The lack of connectivity doesn't allow me to plug and play programs the way I want to. That would help my team to, again, free up their time to have them be able to do what they do best, talking to our clients and sharing advice with them. So that's the whole goal. So when I'm evaluating a piece of technology, that has a big play in it. And I think that's actually ultimately will set us up for the future. The best in this industry is, number one, connectivity. We need better connectivity. And that goes with the carriers too. I mean, their expectations can be a little unrealistic sometimes, given the resources that we have available to us. And they're not opening their floodgates to make something easier or improving their process so that it flows into our management system better, et cetera. So we all have to work together. There's not a single solution in it. But ultimately, we have a people resource problem right now in the whole country. It's not going to get any better. The insurance industry alone, there was a quote given last week at the Best Practices Symposium that 400,000 are going to retire in the next 10 years. I mean, that just brings me to tears thinking about the wisdom that we're going to lose. So if we don't transfer that knowledge and use the technology to speed up things that we really shouldn't be doing, that will be our success when we've got that figured out so that we can do that better.
It's funny. I on one of our earlier podcasts, I was talking to Bobby Salmon, and I actually said the amount of knowledge, intellectual capital that's going to transition out of this industry, that's what keeps me up at night. It really does. So, people like you and Bobby that give back so much and are able to actually share your experience so others can learn from you and with you is pretty impressive. That's actually what makes our industry pretty unique, if you will. So it's funny that they said that at the Best Practices Symposium as well, because to me, that's one of the biggest things that I'd like to preserve. Like, that knowledge and wisdom is going to help us shape what we need to do in the future, not throw it all away and rethink this industry. So congratulations. I know that you are a best practices agency and have been for several years. I'd love to dig into that for a minute, if you don't mind. Tell me what that means to you all and what that's done for your operation and really for how you approach your agency.
Sure. So I love being a best practices agency. It has given us some confidence that our decision making, especially from the financial aspect, is headed in the right direction and that we are doing things correctly in our office. The benchmarks that are provided are huge for us. Again, just to know, are we on the right path? Because it's very easy to compare yourself to the shop down the street and wonder what you're doing wrong. Or to think that you're a superstar because you've got more employees than they do, only to find out that, you're bleeding out the backside and your retention or your employee, to commission ratio is horrific. So that's what it's provided, is some confidence in our decision making. The growth aspect of it, because we can see how other agencies are growing, how fast they're growing, that also continues to give us motivation to do it. I had a mentor of mine recommend that I do it. That's how I started. And once I got all the things kind of set up and all the ducks in a row, what I needed to be measuring, it became a very easy process to continue to apply. And then, of course, you don't want to lose that status once you
Of course not. No. So can you tell me, is there a specific area of that study that's been impactful for your business? I mean, we all want to be considered best, but was there something that was super eye-opening as you went through that process, that you were intentional about how you worked on your agency as a result of that?
Yeah, so we definitely, the growth ratio, that was probably one of the most important things. We still look at that all the time. Best practices is constantly improving. So they've added some categories we didn't have 10 years ago that I really probably would have liked 10 years ago as well, which is great. I mean, it's good stuff for sure. But to know, where our growth rate is, they show average agents, where yours is, where the superstars are. So that gives you somewhere to aim, because I know that there's folks out there. We're not average and we're not superstars. We're right in the middle. We're doing good. We're still forging our path. But I know that there are superstars out there, and that gives me, again, motivation to just keep working hard. There's superstars that are doing it with the right financial acumen, which is a big, important thing. And then we got to go to the Best Practices Symposium. So being in that room with just some incredible talent, who are so willing to share everything. I mean, I met two ladies with an agency outside of DC, and they had grown 30%. Like, what do you attribute that to? She immediately started listing off the things, how they had grown. There's like no secret. This is what we did. You can do it too.
I love that about, and honestly, talk about that for a little bit. Networks are so important. I actually get to talk to agents all across the country, and that's not true for many of them. Some of them are really focused on their area, their agency, and they really haven't broadened. So one of the things we want to do is really bring some of these stories to people who otherwise may not be able to hear them. Tell me what your network experiences look like inside North Carolina, outside North Carolina, whatever that looks like for you.
So inside North Carolina, I was so fortunate to be a district sales manager for Erie. I traveled all around Western North Carolina and then the greater Charlotte area after I moved on to this side. So I met virtually every agency in Western North Carolina at one point or another, whether they became an Erie agent or not. What I loved the most about that experience and the relationships that I formed there was so simply that they would share with me the best of their best. And then that's what I took to build our agency. So all my good ideas were stolen, how you set up your files at the time, how you hire, which people you don't want to hire, just all of those things. It was such great lessons that they were so willing to share. So I have a super strong network inside of North Carolina from that experience. Very early in our career, we joined Quantum Club, which you may have heard about through the years. Marketing, it was a marketing group. And that was how our original network started outside North Carolina. We had a few friends within the state that we would travel with, but we made some relationships outside of North Carolina that we still have today. One super good friend of mine is in New Jersey. He's actually going to retire. God bless him. And he started a t-shirt company of all things for wrestling. And our son is a wrestler, as is his. So we've been reconnected, and he's doing all the business for our wrestling team. So it is. And then I also got to do Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. And that was a very, very unique experience. It is an incredible program, chocked full of just resources and good insight. But the number one thing that came from it is my friend Beth. So her and I got put into the group together, our small group together, cohort and our small group together. We were the only insurance agents in the program at the time. And we became fast friends. That was in 2019. And so we set up a monthly call with one another to stay in touch. But she is always only a phone call away. And that has just been a tremendous relationship for me to continue. So I'm very happy to report she's coming to North Carolina this year. So I cannot wait to see her.
I can't either. Actually, Beth is my accountability coach, and we took on doing the Dirty 130 together. And I got to meet her at a mastermind. That's the beauty of this. Like, her perspective's so different than, someone who would be in Florida or someone who would be whatever. And it's an incredible place when you can find someone who thinks differently than you and is willing to spend the time. So I agree. I can't wait to see her there either, to be quite honest with you. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about one of your friends is retired. How are you and your husband planning for retirement? What does that look like in your world? Because I think so many agency owners are heads down working on my agency. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait, I'm ready to leave tomorrow. And, from my perspective, that's one of the worst things you can do. And honestly, it just limits your options. It's one of the things I hope to change in this industry is to get people to think about that, plan for it, and give them as many options as possible. So tell me what that looks like for you and your husband.
Yeah. So Carey, I know you know all the sad stories. I mean, I've heard so many of them. I've been involved in them as an agent friend where someone has passed away and there has to be a quick agency sale. I've seen it too many times where there wasn't a plan in place. So at some point in the last couple of years, my hubby and I realized that the runway to the end of the insurance game for us is shorter than it was from the beginning, that we are, I'm still in my 40s, but I've aged out of the Young Agents Club. So for me, the end game has always been that we want to retire with the wealth that we've accumulated from this agency. I mean, that's why we put our blood, sweat, and tears into continuing to grow it. So we backed into our goal. We figured out what would help, what would keep our lifestyle the way we want it, what we want to sell for. And we were conservative with that number, not knowing, what will be the marketplace at that time. And we backed into it. So we set a pretty aggressive goal to double our agency from 2021 to 2026. And that's what we're on track doing right now. That's the path that we've been on right now. And if we can just follow the plan I set up, which is the simplest of Excel spreadsheets, it was so simple, of course. But if we can just follow that with the growth goal, we'll be all set.
So just repeat that for all you listeners out there. I'm just going to just put an exclamation point around this because it's like music to my ears. If you set a goal and you measure it, you can manage it. If there is no goal, you have absolutely no idea if you're ever going to get there. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? And listen, you're all salespeople, like you want to achieve. So having that point in the horizon that you're pointing towards, that North Star, being surrounded by best practices agencies that have done it and being able to hear that it's possible. I mean, honestly, it's music to my ears. So I love that about you. We got to spend some time together and do a little bit of work together on, maybe a possible acquisition, but I could tell that about you almost immediately, that you are all business, man. You know exactly what you want and you're going to go after it, which I admire. It's a tough thing to balance all of that. And I really do admire that about you.
Oh,
So
thank you. I appreciate
hats
that.
off.
Well, and I
Yeah, hats
love
off.
working with you. I mean, that the beauty of having you as a resource, especially what we were working on, it was just meant the world to me that I was on the right path, that it was the logic was correct.
It's good to have a sounding board though, right? I mean, that's the beauty. Like, that's like what Beth is. That's what I am. That's what's in our industry. And that's what I'm hoping some of these stories tell people. Yeah, like I'm doing the right thing. But if you hear anything from Michelle, write down your goal, create a plan, and work the plan, right? That's what it's all
So
about,
we
right?
even made it our vision statement. So our vision statement is internally facing. Not that I wouldn't share it with externally, but wasn't meant to be an external statement. It was really meant to be an internal statement. Our staff is aware of it. And that is the one thing that we measure every month at our team meetings. I mean, they know the production goals and things like that, but that really is the thing that we highlight because everyone knows if we're on track or we're not, and knows why we're doing it. So we started with that and we trickled the whole way down into annual goals, into monthly goals. And then all of our team has rocks because we do loosely follow EOS as well. Because that was the behavior part of that is so important to making sure that folks know what it is that is your number one priority of them. Is it answering the phone or is it making the outgoing call? It depends on the role in the agency, of course, but it's really important.
Without question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I feel like has been a theme of the answers you've given us is finding people in your own area to make your community. I know you've talked about a few ways, right? Through INC, through other classes and things, but what advice would you have for someone who's young in the industry, who's looking to grow? Where would you tell them, go here to find your community?
So, of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased in saying IANC, but obviously I believe wholeheartedly in the independent agency organization. I mean, North Carolina, the association is second to none. I can now say that with 100% certainty. I have been to the Big I meetings. I have met lots of other folks from other associations. Our association has some forward thinking resources available to our agents that just don't exist in other states. So that is the number one way. But it's not just joining the association. You actually have to get involved in order to meet your people. So that can look differently for everyone depending on what you're passionate about. But even when you're starting up, and it's long days and very long nights, if you take the time, even if it's a small amount of time that you can contribute to the association, you will get it back 100-fold in the relationships, in the knowledge that you gain from that. And just having the person that you can call and say, oh my gosh, my payroll company has got to get changed. Do you have any ideas who I can go to? I mean, I threw that out to an agent group that I'm part of in Charlotte and immediately got the answer and we went with it and it was awesome. I mean, it's, those are the kinds of things when you're on, small business owner island that you need to be able to have a little rowboat to go over to your friend and say, can you help me out for a minute? So IANC by far would be the best way. But getting to know other agents outside of that, there's lots of groups online you can be a part of as well. If social media is your thing that you can connect with, but participating in the conventions and in the expos and the things that we have going on is very important for the networking.
Yeah. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice when your husband was starting that scratch agency out of your bedroom and you were starting to think about joining him, what would you say?
I think when you start the business, you have like the stars of magic in your eyes that everything is just going to go properly and there will be no hiccups and all your processes and procedures will be wonderful. So I would remind my younger self that if it can go well, wrong, it probably will. And that you will learn more from those mistakes than you will from the things that went right, because that's how we have carved our path out is, making mistakes, trying again. And the thing that you can't do is stop trying, because the minute you stop trying, that's actually when you failed. So whether it's a good path or it's a bad path, you've got to keep forging ahead and trying different things to succeed. And I think that's our most important lesson in the 23 years that we've been in business.
I talked to a really good friend of mine yesterday, and I was having an off day. There's no two ways around that. I was, sometimes you swing the bat and you miss terribly. And he was like the best person. He's like, Carey, here's the deal. Sometimes that happens, and the best thing you can do is pick up the bat and swing it again. Don't stop swinging, was his advice to me. And, he didn't have to say that. And I think it's good for us to hear that from each other. We're all trying to build things. Entrepreneurship is not an easy thing. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And that's not the case. So I would agree with you 100%. Never, ever stop trying, and don't think because you're having a rough time that it's a reason to quit. That's actually a reason to work harder. So yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Great advice. Michelle, thank you so very much for joining us and for being a great friend and an incredible leader. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in March, and Beth, actually. So, but thank you so much for spending time with us and talking to us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I love you ladies to pieces. I actually got to know Lindsay before I even got to know Carey, and her and I were fast friends. So
this is a funny story. You were actually the first person in the industry who I got to introduce my mom to, and not that they recognized me.
Love it. I remember when you told me that.
Yep. My mom was like, Michelle O'Connor, like we were talking to someone, and they're like, Michelle O'Connor. She's like, I haven't met her yet. And I was like, oh, I got this. I know her. She's mine.
Here's the reality, Michelle. That tide is going to turn very quickly. Lindsay, and I'm 100% sure she'll be introducing me to all kinds of people, but that is pretty cool. Right. So yeah, that's really funny. Anyway.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.